one of the questions that came up in the comments that I thought I would touch on, because I didn't really touch on in that video, was about watching television, because it's the way we watch television on yachts now. That's changed as well, because if you've got cable TV, if you're I don't know where you live. Obviously, if you're in the US, cable is predominantly the choice that people use to watch cable television, right? In the UK, it's more Sky. Traditionally, it was through a satellite dish. People have a satellite dish on that side of the house, and they would have a box, and then would watch their cable television through that satellite system, right? But now that's changing now in the UK. I don't know about in the US. I haven't lived in the US for a long time. The way that you can watch Sky now is you can simply put an app onto your Roku or onto your Apple TV, or you can even get a Now TV box, plug that into your internet, and you can watch Sky TV, which is the monopoly of cable television. Sorry, I've got to stop doing that. Is the monopoly of cable television in the UK is Sky Television, and that's happened on yachts now as well. When I showed the B-roll of the yachts, especially there was one particular yacht I used quite a lot in that video, and it was Flying Fox, and the reason why I showed that video that yacht is because it's got so many VSAT antennas, or it's got so many antennas, satellite antennas on the yacht, that it really sort of emphasizes the point that I'm trying to make. Having said that, in that shot, most of those satellite antennas are television antennas. So if you see, I'll put the shot on screen while I talk, but if you see that shot, there's 4 giant antennas. They're 3.4 meter parabolic antennas, and right at the very top of the mast, there's a small, what looks small, that's like a 1.2 meter in diameter or across antenna. That's the VSAT antenna. That's actually the internet antennas right at the top of the mast, the one that looks tiny. But those other ones, those big ones there, those 3.4 meter ones, they're actually for television, and they're pairs. So think about those. Don't think about them as 4 antennas. Think about them as 2 pairs. And the reason why they're in pairs is because the mast is higher. If there's anything higher than the antenna on the ship, then you have to have 2, because at some point as the ship turns and the satellite's in space and the antenna's pointing up like that, and as the ship turns, if anything gets in between the antenna and the satellite, then it creates blockage, and then you lose your signal, right? So we have 2, and then we have a box that programs, that understands where they are in relation to the satellite, and we program in the degrees of blockage that they have, so that the box automatically switches between port and starboard antennas. So that's the reason why there's 2. And on Flying Fox, there's 4. So there's 2 pairs, 2 forward and 2 aft. And they're all for television, right? Well, the problem with satellite television is, and you don't realize this when you live, if you have it in, like if you live in the US or if you live in the UK, you never move, right? Your house is never moving. So if you move around the UK, you're still in the footprint of that satellite. But when you go out of the UK, if you go to Europe, you can still pick up Sky Television to a point in Europe because the footprint is still there. But if you go like down to Italy, then you lose the ability to see it, because they're only covering the UK, right? They have no license to actually broadcast it in Europe. So so you lose that. And there's no reason for them to broadcast it in Europe, because it's designed for the British market. And it's the same in the US. If you've got satellite television in the US, then they're only going to cover the US, right? So once you go out of that footprint, you lose the signal. Now, if you think about a yacht and you're traveling all around the world, when you're in North America, this is what we used to do on the yachts, is we'd have a load of boxes, like 30 boxes on a big yacht. We'd have 30 boxes. I can't remember the name of the system now in the US, but we'd have all of these boxes. And then in Europe, we'd have the Sky boxes, and we'd have different LMBs for those satellite TVROs. We call them television receive only antennas, those big 3.4 meters. They're not VSATs. They only receive signals. They have no transmission ability. You can make them into a VSAT, but they're TVROs, television receive only. we changed the LMB to the frequency, and then so as we crossed over into the US, we would switch out all the boxes and switch out the LMBs, and we would pick up the US television, right? And then when we went back to the Med, because in the Med you could get Sky Television depending on where you were, and we would switch over all those boxes back to the Sky Television boxes, and that was something that we used to do. And the reason why we had 30 of them is because we had, if you had a lot of cabins, each cabin needs a separate box. So, and on some of the yachts I worked on, they had this system whereby you could switch on the TV and you could see 16 small windows. And then in each window, there was a different feed. So you could set this main window to have 16 different channels. So the owner could turn on the TV and he could see what's happening on 16 different channels. And then he could cycle with his remote between them, and then the audio would switch. So he could watch different things, right? So let's say he's into stocks, he's got all his stuff on, or if he's into the news, he's got all his news stuff on, and he can switch between them. So to do that 16 things, you needed 16 boxes for each channel. Now, with the advent of Starlink, well, even before Starlink, what we started to do was, if you bought the satellite boxes in the US, you could also stream it over the internet, right? They give you the option to be able to stream it as well as have the box. So what we were doing is we were buying the boxes and we were registering them to, this is the difficult part, we had to register them to an address in the US. So we would use various different addresses for various different reasons. I don't want to get into that, but we'd use the different addresses to register the boxes, and then we wouldn't even install the boxes. We started to stream them just by accessing it over the internet. And the benefit of that is that the owner could watch those boxes, or he could watch the US satellite television anywhere in the world, whereas before he could only watch it when he was in North America or in the Caribbean. So that is how it's changed. So now he could watch, ESPN in South Africa or in Japan or wherever, think about a place, and he could watch that television there. As long as he had an internet connection, he could watch the TV. The problem with that is the bandwidth of the internet, right? So if he's watching television, he's streaming, high definition television, he's using probably 2 to 3 megs of his internet connection. And it didn't take very much to interrupt that feed, and you start to get that buffering. Now we've got Starlink, and we've got 200 megabits per second. Those days are gone. So the reason why it's a roundabout way of getting back to the point that those giant antennas on top of, pick a yacht, Flying Fox, Crescent, Scheherazade, Luminance just come out, Nord, they've all got those giant antennas on the top of those ships, right, of those yachts, and they're all really redundant now. They don't need them. In fact, it's a substandard system. If you compare, like, let's take Nord for example. That's a Russian boat. Well, so is Flying Fox, but we'll take Nord for example. That's a Russian boat. So the owner probably wants to watch Russian television, right? And it's exactly the same thing for him. He needs to watch Russian television, so the antennas are pointing at a satellite that carries Russian television. But once we go out of that footprint, we lose the television. Whereas now, if they offer that same system, I don't know if they do, I haven't worked on a Russian yacht for a long time, then you can just stream it over the internet and he can watch it wherever he wants. You've been watching a clip from our new Yacht Report podcast. Catch the full episode by clicking here. You can find a link to the new YouTube channel, Yacht Report Podcast, down here. You can also find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts.